Hello and welcome to Tremaines Sci-Fi Hour! Today we are doing the bio of Isaac Asimov, the writer of Foundation, of the robot, whatever it was, of numerous letters and numerous books, and, of course, the inventor of psychohistory and of the term robotics. Now,
Oh, that was close.
yeah,
Yeah, robotic, not robot.
I remember that just as I was saying it. So today Jag will be leading us in this because Jag is very good at biographies of authors, as you've seen in the past Heinlein and Doc Smith bios. Now, we've had a lot of episodes about Asimov's writing, but not a lot about his personal life. So we're going to get into that. Now, I will say ahead of time, Asimov was a very good writer and a fantastic artist. Now, I want everyone to remember, separate the art from the artist. Do not let what we're about to say ruin Asimov's work for you, because it is fantastic. If you feel that way, don't read H.P. Lovecraft either. Alright. Jack.
Hey, didn't Lovecraft have a cat?
Oh, okay.
Like, if you have a cat, you can't be a bad person, right?
And if anyone's wondering what we're referring to, look up the name of H.P. Lovecraft's cat and a poem called The Creation of the... Well, let's just move on.
The same as his cat, anyway.
So, yeah, H.P. Lovecraft we may do a cover over as well. If you're enjoying these bios, please leave some comments on Facebook and on Instagram, because we have pages there, and you should check them out. Alright, now...
Let us know who you want to know a bit more about.
If it's J.K. Rowling, we're not doing it. So, Jag, where should we start? So, are we going to start about him being born in Russia, or are we just going to get into some of the juicier details?
Well, I suppose if we're doing a bio, we should start where it all starts.
Soviet Russia.
Asimov means winter grain. Or it's an of, so it's son of the winter grain.
Okay. So does that mean Ivanov means son of Ivan?
Yes.
So it's like...
It's a patronym.
So it's like Johnson is son of John.
Yeah, or MacDonald is son of Donald.
Ah.
Or O'Reilly is son of Riley. A lot of European names are patronymical like that, where it's just your dad's name. Yeah. It used to be just your dad's name and then your name, but then they tried to... you followed lineages further back, and so they became family names instead. Although I think Iceland still does... You are, at every generation's family name is different because it is just your dad's name.
Right, okay, yeah. I see.
So, Sven Johnson would have a son, which would be, Tim Svensson.
Tim Svensson. And then becomes John Timson.
Anyway, so... originally his family name was Azimov. Well, I don't know how to explain the Cyrillic letters, but in English it was Azimov. His father, when they moved to the United States, went, Z, they'll think we're German. Let's do an S. That's more American. Yeah, we're Russian. We don't want people to think we're German.
I mean, what's Russia ever done? And then
Well, what's strange is, Asimov was a bit of a fortune teller as such. All science fiction writers are to an extent. I guess his father was too, because it was 1923. And it was like,
Well, World War
better.
One had happened, and they blamed the Germans for that.
True, true.
Ha! Schooled again, Jag. All right. So
How could I forget World War One?
yeah, you fought in that, didn't you?
Mm.
Which side did you fight for again?
So, as we say,
Okay. Anyway. Um, yeah, Asimov. So Asimov.
well, sticking with his name for a minute,
Yeah.
after he became famous, he'd meet fans of his and readers and be like, "I'm Isaac Asimov." They're like, "Okay, so what is your name though?" A lot of people thought it was a pseudonym
A pen name.
for huh?
A pen name.
Yes, a nom de plume,
A non.
um, or a pen name, yes,
Yeah.
of an author who just had a very common name and wanted to stand out a bit better. If you're John Smith, you're probably going to write under an interesting name instead.
Or if you're called
And
Stephen King, you're probably going to change. You're probably going to have a different pen name.
exactly. So if you are a Stephen King out there looking to get into writing, I do recommend writing under a different name.
Or.
Maybe Richard Bachman, uh, John Swithin, or Beryl Evans would be some fine choices.
Oh my god.
Little
Okay.
literary humour for you there, folks. Those are all names that Stephen King has written under.
Thanks for explaining the joke.
Bachman is a great one because there was one critic review of Bachman's work is what Stephen King would write if Stephen King could write. He then read that review and went, huh, Schrodinger's author, nice. But anyway, so that's all the stuff from before he was born. I guess we get to where he was born. Russia. He was born in Russia in Petrovichy. Help me out here, Tremaine. I'm saying that wrong. Petrovichy. Petrovichy.
I haven't got Asimov's Wikipedia page open like you.
Well,
Petrovich. I can't say it either.
so a tiny little town on the border between Belarus and Russia. Well, back then it was just part of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. Nowadays it's a border town. And
no, that would have been part of Belarus. That part of Belarus would have been Russian at that time.
Yeah, it was part of the Federation then.
Yeah,
for sure.
But not all of it. Half of it belonged to Poland. We're not going to get into that. Half of Ukraine belonged to Poland. And then Poland lost a lot of land and then gained a lot of Germany. So win-win there. Anyway,
well, this was in Smolensk Oblast.
Smolensk.
It's also hard to tie down these sorts of things because it's like, well, it was a different time back then. It was a different time. We're not sure what time. He was born sometime between October the 4th and January the 2nd.
Yeah, because the Gregorian calendar was still being used by the Orthodox, but the Soviet government had changed it to the Julian calendar.
That, and we're talking about a town of about 200 people.
Yeah. He was born on the kitchen table. Yeah, I see what you mean.
There was probably not a doctor involved. Which, actually, I'm going to say there was probably not a doctor involved for quite a while. His parents were Jewish millers. Both his parents were They were Orthodox Jews, but not Orthodox in behavior.
Oh, that was
They were
swingers.
still they were still believers in Judaism, um, but they were gentle Jews. So they were officially Orthodox. Now the reason I say that there's probably very few doctors involved is in 1921, all of the 17 children who lived in the city got double pneumonia, and he survived. The rest didn't. Uh, so there may have been other children there at the time, but it's as I say, a very small city, town. What would village? It's a
Village,
very small.
yeah. Borderline
Just
house, yeah.
just thought I should check on that one. It is indeed a village. Um, yeah, 16 children died pretty much all at once. After which his family decided to go to United States. Um,
United
he
States.
never knew Russian. He knew English and Yiddish. Um,
Uh,
which makes sense because of that village was half Jewish, half Belarusian. One church, one synagogue, each of which had a school. Um, it is the city has a very sad history. Let's just say that they were right to leave. Um, 416 of the inhabitants were killed in 1941 because they were Jewish, and it's more than the amount of people who live there now. So it was probably about half of the village, every Jew. So yes, they left. A good choice. Um,
Also, Stalin. Probably wouldn't have had the same career he had under Stalin.
yeah, I mean the city was made due to Tsar Nicholas kicking all the Jews out, and that was as far as was required to get them away from dying. Uh,
If you didn't know this, the Jews have had quite a hard time.
yeah, I think what I saw was every single country has at some point harassed the Jews, shall we say. Uh, so, from a young age, he was an autodidact. He taught himself to read.
Oh,
He taught his younger sister to read. Um, his sister was, let's say, 1 year younger than him.
right, yeah.
Approximately 1.5 years, maybe. Two.
Okay.
Could be approaching 2 years.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, carry
And
on.
because he taught her to read, she was able to go to school. So this was, yeah, also in America, but of a different time. His mother got him into school a year early, so he actually entered school at age 4.
Jeez.
I'd have to double check on that. American schooling confuses me sometimes. But so does English. Private school is the one everyone goes to. Public school is where fancy people go.
Yeah.
I don't know. None of it makes sense. But yes, she told them that he was born September the 7th, 1919, which is before even the earliest estimate of October the 4th. So, definite lie. But it got him into school early. Again, he'd taught himself to read, so it's fine. And he became a US citizen at the age of 8. Now, his family, being Russian Jewish millers, um, decided that they would own candy stores.
Right.
So they owned a small candy store, moved up to a big candy store. They were always in the candy industry.
Right.
Now, again, we're looking at late 20s, so these were also newsstands. They sold newspapers, magazines, and candy. And there's no way he would have been able to afford magazines.
Right. Yeah.
But leftovers, at his parents' work, just reading ones before they were sold and all this, got him into science fiction quite early.
Oh, okay.
Uh, there's a lot of relatively uninteresting things about his life. He went to a high school in Brooklyn. It was always in public schools because he was in a relatively well-off family if they owned stores, but they were not in any way rich. Back then, land was cheaper. Even a poor family could have a little store. Um, but so, yeah, he went to a number of schools. As I said, Boys High School, City College of New York. He was there for a few days because he got a scholarship at Seth Low Junior College, a branch of Columbia University. He wasn't allowed at the real Columbia College because he was Jewish. Jews and Italian Americans were not officially not allowed, but yeah, Jews and Italian Americans who were like scholarship quality, like clearly going to become amazing scientists, just couldn't get in. They had to go into these side branches schools
Right.
instead,
Yeah.
which was yeah, a bit sad. He studied to do zoology. Then he had a class where he had to dissect a cat. Went, oh, I don't like that, and went into chemistry instead. Which I don't get.
Yeah. You don't understand why he had a problem with cutting open a cat?
Well, I mean, my partner is a bit squeamish, but she did vetting, and she had no problem cutting open animals.
Yeah,
She
but
was
your
just doing a minor operation on a horse, like.
partner is very strange,
True.
just like you.
Um, he tried to get into medical school
Right.
after getting his Bachelor of Science.
Right.
Um, they kept saying no.
Was it because
So
he was a Jew?
well, I don't, I don't know. It's probably a factor. You come in with the name Isaac Asimov. Your parents are Orthodox Jews. You have a hard time. But he did end up getting accepted into a graduate program in chemistry. Well, he was rejected for the graduate project, and then he was accepted on probation. Um, but he did get his master in chemistry, and ended up getting a doctor of philosophy degree in chemistry as well.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
Again, I mentioned he's a bit of an autodidact. At the same time, he also learned French and German. And this is between the years of 41 and 48, so interesting languages to learn. It was a bit of a kerfuffle at the time. Now, his thesis, because
Did you just refer to World War II as a kerfuffle?
That's right, Tremaine. Prove me wrong. It was a kerfuffle. Anyway, which is quite the kerfuffle.
The Second World Kerfuffle. Okay.
So, I of course mentioned in the Doc Smith biography what his thesis was on. The effect of differently bleached flowers on the end result on donuts.
The Doctor of Donuts, yeah.
Asimov's thesis was the kinetics of the reaction inactivation of tyrosinase during its catalysis of the aerobic oxidation of catechol. Now, for those who are like, I know a couple of those words, but I don't really understand what that would be. Yes, same. I did a fair bit of chemistry. I have no idea what his thesis was.
And I did no chemistry, so let's move on.
So during his GSZ, 1941 to 1948, he did spend 3 years working as a chemist at the Philadelphia Navy Yard's Naval Air Experimental Station.
That sounds familiar.
Does it? It's where he worked with Robert Heinlein.
Oh my god! What are the odds? Also, if you're interested in Heinlein, we published an episode last week about Heinlein. So maybe check it out? Maybe?
Yeah, you should. It's good. So...
Oops, sorry. Carry on.
So he was drafted into the army.
Oh, no.
1945. It was a good year to be drafted. Now, what's funny is if his mother had not corrected his age in his 3rd year of school, he would have been too old to be drafted. In a moment of just absolute luck, a bureaucratic error stopped his military allotment, so he was removed from a task force mere days before it sailed to participate in Operation Crossroads.
Ooh.
Now, that might not be familiar to some of you.
No.
But perhaps Bikini Atoll is.
Oh, no!
So, he was taken off the boat literally days before the boat was sent to observe nuclear weapon tests. Now, a lot of those sailors and soldiers suffered terribly from radiation exposure.
Who'd have thought?
But he ended up serving for a total of 9 months before his honourable discharge. July 26, 1946.
Right.
He had been promoted to corporal 2 weeks before that. So he got to be a corporal.
Nice.
After he finished his doctorate and postdoc, he was offered associate professor of biochemistry at Boston University. Not necessarily because he was a great biochemist. Dr. William Boyd, who was associate professor of biochemistry there, really liked his book Nightfall. Yeah.
That's some interesting nepotism right there.
Yeah. But in the end, he just got a instructor of biochemistry. He eventually stopped really doing that job anymore because he earned more from his books than from being a university professor. He was earning the modern equivalent of $57,000 a year. US.
Oh.
But as I say, he was earning more from his books, so he just stopped doing research. He kept lecturing students in the good way as the professor, not finding students and hassling them about their clothes or whatever. Uh,
Okay, check. Yeah.
got tenure and then was dismissed.
Why was he dismissed?
He stopped doing research.
Oh, okay.
Took them 6 years to realize. They're like, wow, you haven't really published much papers in the last 6 years. And he's like, yeah, it's just not making me money. Writing these books now, that makes me money. I was like,
Get out.
well, then you're not a professor? Get out. He managed to keep his title, so he is still, well, I mean, not now, but he was still a professor. But yeah, that's most of his education, most of his career. He was asked to help DARPA on their missile defense project.
Right, yeah.
He said no. He was worried that if he was exposed to classified information, it would ruin his writing, because it would then mean that he'd know stuff that he can't put onto paper.
Right, yeah.
And once you know something, it's hard to come up with an alternative. So it would lock him in. It would lock his thinking into things that he can't share, and it would just,
Break him.
it would ruin it. It would ruin it. He did help them, but it was all one way. He sent them stuff. For example, a paper called On Creativity, which was just, hey, here's how you can encourage your staff to be more creative. Come up with more interesting and more radical concepts. Now, what should we move on to next?
Well,
His writing, his
I think we need to spice. I think we need to spice this up a little bit. So we're going to talk about something that may be uncomfortable to some listeners, and to others, those incels out there, it won't be. So now, old Professor Asimov was a man of born in the 20s. He was born in the 20s.
Possibly 1990.
Right, so
Or
possibly in the
919.
tens, possibly in the tens.
Teens? What do we call it?
I don't know.
What did we call it last decade?
Shut up, Jake. Right. So we basically have this problem here, which is Isaac Asimov was a bit of a creep. Now, Jag, you've got some stories, not personal stories. He didn't sexually harass Jag, but he did sexually harass a few women, a lot of women, at a sci-fi convention. So, Jag, maybe you want to tell us a bit about that.
Yes, no, he never personally harassed me. I was 2 when he died.
No. You were
It would have been
50.
weird.
You were 62 when he died.
Oh, right. So, hello. Well, I can either go straight into the bad stories, or I can provide a context for how he ended up being
A creep.
that sort of fellow.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Let's give some context first. That's a good idea.
So, at the age of 22, he met a woman, Gertrude Blugerman. Good Canadian name there. And on a blind date.
Right.
March, April, May, June, July. They married 5 months later.
Okay.
That was his only real relationship. Up till their divorce, we got remarried.
Right. Okay.
Um, he did get remarried 2 weeks after his divorce. Anyway, he was not great with women. He missed out on the foundational years of being around women.
Oh, because he went to an all boys high school.
He went to an all boys high school. He didn't really get much exposure to women. He missed out on all the socializing. He never learned to swim. He never learned to ride a bike. Um, his interests were in things such like Gilbert and Sullivan operas.
Jag.
Oh, that's an actual example. I'm sorry, Tremaine. So, and it does sort of show itself in his writings, where he has a grand total of one strong female character, Susan Calvin. That's pretty much it.
Right.
Because he started writing so early, and this is going by his own letters. When he started writing, he had never been on a date, didn't know anything about girls. He thought that science fiction should not have romance, and definitely not sex.
So what he was basically saying is, if I can't have it, no one can. Yeah.
I have heard people suggest that Susan Calvin is a poor example of a female character because there's very little about her that's female.
Right.
I don't know how you feel about that claim. You've read the Robot series?
No, I haven't.
Ah.
It's next on my list, but I've also got like 42 books I have to get through.
So, Susan Calvin has, as I said, his only strong female character. And she is almost emotionless. She contains very of the few things that really code a character as feminine.
Right.
She's not in any way nurturing. She's not.
So she doesn't have traditional feminine traits that would have been more synonymous with the time Asimov was writing in.
Especially in like the 40s, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was this whole thing of like women can also do strong stuff, but that was because
The
the
war
war
was
effort.
the war.
They,
Or if
yeah,
you were
they
in the
just needed
Soviet,
women to work.
if you were in the Soviet Union, just because everyone had to work.
But yeah, in his robot books, I feel like Susan Calvin could have been a guy, and nothing would have been different, just at all.
But didn't you say the same thing of the alien woman?
Oh, yeah, Ripley. So she became somewhat feminine after they decided it would be a lady. She gained these attributes of nurturing, her looking after her daughter and all that.
Right. Okay.
Is a bit more traditionally feminine.
Okay.
Susan is missing anything like that. And then some of there's very like yeah. Here's a description of Dr. Calvin. She is a small woman, but there is a towering strength in her face, tensile strength, that speaks to endurance, to maintaining in the imperfect world. Her mouth is thin and her face pale. Grace lives in her features and intelligence, but she is not an attractive woman. She is not one of those women who in later years can be said of them, she must have been a beauty when she was younger. Susan Calvin was always plain, and clearly always a powerful personality.
Right. So he was basically describing a tomboy, which is a trope in fiction now, which is the idea that the only way to make a powerful female character is to remove anything traditionally feminine and to make them more masculine. Which. So this is actually. I do want to talk about this briefly because we did talk about eugenics when we talked about Heinlein. So the issue, and this is an issue I see a lot. So there's someone I watch on YouTube for writing advice. She's called Jenna Moresi, and she talks about toxic tropes. Now, I often wonder, and this is purely just wondering. I'm not a woman. I can't really give a definitive answer on this, but I understand that feminine traits are not innate in women, and that they're conditioned to believe that through society. But does it mean that if the women cannot identify with the character, that it makes them less of a strong female character? If you see what I'm saying.
My understanding is there is, shall we say, predispositions towards certain behaviors and attributes. But ultimately, variation within is greater than variation without.
What do you mean by
that? Basically, it's the idea that if you take two women, they can be as different from each other as any one woman and one man, basically. Right. Yeah. Like, people are so individual that any sort of sweeping categories don't really work, because it is so easy and common to find people who just don't fit the tropes.
Right, which is like that. What's it called? The Myers-Briggs test, where that tries to class people as the INSF or whatever it is.
Oh, Myers-Briggs, yes, astrology for incels.
Thanks, Jack. Anyway, so what
all negative feedback is to go onto the Facebook or Instagram, and remember, I don't use my real name, so you'll have to harass Tremaine about the things I say.
No. And I will pass on all those messages to Jag.
He does. He has passed on a few messages.
Yeah, some of them were mean. Some of them were a bit weird. And actually, while we're talking about that, I did get a private message from someone who watched a Star Wars episode that we did, where one of our former hosts said something about Palpatine. So I should clarify, I did not agree with what she said, but we want to clarify that Palpatine's actor, Ian McDiarmid, has a large nose as a person and has quite a pronounced forehead and had to be made bald for the emperor's to become the emperor. So I should mention that as a podcast, I don't think we think that Palpatine was a Jewish stereotype. I think more Palpatine's actor just happened to look a bit like a traditional Jewish villain. But in saying that, there are other racial stereotypes in Star Wars. Watto, that comes to mind. Anyway, back to Asimov. So
I will say, somewhat in defense of the idea that Palpatine was a little bit of a Jewish stereotype, is that as you say, it's all about the actor. But if you've got Anthony Hopkins, for example, he's going to be a villain. He looks villainy.
Right.
Palpatine's actor has these slightly more villainous facial features, which are also slightly Jewishy facial features. There may not have been any conscious intent on doing that,
Yeah,
but
but also,
you can draw a parallel. It's probably not malicious.
yeah, and also the comment you made was a bit unfair, and also the one about Leia. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify that because someone did message me saying, "Hey, this is not right, and you should have said something as a Star Wars fan." But
We do receive your feedback, and anything you say to us is definitely right.
except for
Uh,
that one guy on Instagram, he's yeah, we'll just whew. Okay,
good conversation. So
I
anyway,
regret saying that. Yep.
so he wasn't good at writing women. He'd not had much exposure to women. Never been on dates,
So
and he says the term he used was early imprinting, where because he started writing that way, he stuck writing that way, and it's just a habit almost. Now, the problem is it wasn't just his writing. That would be nice if it was, but he was known for at conventions just ignoring personal boundaries for contact. Um, he would, kiss women, um, who, the reactions varied. Some people, of course, charmed, but there were plenty enough who clearly, like, visibly unhappy with that, and he just didn't care. Absolutely no respect towards people's personal boundaries, when it comes to, we say, sensual touch. Uh, by modern times, we would definitely consider his behavior to be harassment and at times assault. Uh, we say that we should always view people in the context of their time. People were better then. Like, he was also bad for his time. Um, his contemporary fellows um, were aware of and complained and brought up the issues of this. So
sexual harassment, yeah, and well, actually, sexual assault.
at times assault, but largely harassment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If we're talking contemporary, it would definitely be just considered harassment. Um, Now we would definitely consider some of his actions to be sexual assault. Um, but yeah, let's say like he he was bad for his time. Even I mean, a lot of this is after the '60s when
Feminist
by
movement.
by that point everyone should know that you know I try to be gentle in what we talk about, so I won't go into details. But yeah, unwilling contact.
Are you saying after that eugenics episode that you like to be gen?
In many ways, eugenics can be seen like hypothetically or in the
Okay, I
abstract.
see what you mean.
This is actual people, and we have some of the names.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Uh, so let's not.
Yeah. Okay. So, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say about Asimov? I mean, we ended on quite a low note, so maybe a high note.
Yeah, it really sucks that he was bad in these ways because he was a visionary. He is considered one of the, I forget the term for it, but the three greats of hard science fiction.
Yeah.
Um, he also wrote mysteries. and just general fiction and fantasy. He had some weird views, like he did try to change the calendar. Basically, he wanted the calendar split into 4 sections, A through D, each of which has 91, I think, days in it. And then instead of saying, for example, December the 1st, you'd say the date is D73.
like a D&D die.
That would be a strange dice indeed.
Yeah, how many sides with that? Fuck, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
He didn't. I certainly can't find anything about potential neurodivergency, and I'll say that given that he probably wasn't, but Susan Calvin was written kind of on the spectrum. I'd say again, I'm aware I'm sensitive to representations of autistic people, but she does come off as potentially autistic. His poor socializing, his incredible focus on computer science and that sort of thing, he has some typical traits, but
No
it's impossible
diagnosis, yeah.
it's impossible to diagnose someone who's passed and
also someone you've never met. So,
and
and that's something I should say.
mean, yeah.
If you there are people, psychiatrists online who keep getting asked to diagnose, like Hannibal Lecter, or diagnose. They can't do that. Stop asking, because they can't do that. Carry on, Jack.
Yeah. So I'm comfortable saying that he had some traits typical to certain neurodivergencies, but I guess that's where I have to leave it there.
Yeah.
He contracted HIV from a blood transfusion. There's not really a great story in that. You've already mentioned he coined the term robotics. Obviously, he didn't coin the term robot. That's an
Ancient
old
Slavic,
Russian,
yeah.
Slavic word, which just meant slave.
God. Yeah.
Slave or worker?
What's the difference? Hey-ho.
Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha.
Alright.
But,
Well, Jack?
Well, Tremaine?
I think I interrupted you. Carry on.
If you like. He's been a great influence to many good authors and also just many good scientists. His concept of psychohistory is what led Paul Krugman to become an economist. Paul Krugman is a Nobel Prize winner economist. If you know an economist, it's probably him, basically.
No, I think of Reich. What's his name? Roger Reich?
No, I don't.
Paul Reich?
But yeah, massive influence. The entire concept of the positronic brain has been used everywhere.
Robert Reich, sorry.
Star Trek wouldn't really exist without Asimov. Arguably, the droids in Star Wars owe a lot to him. And really prolific writer.
Yeah, he wrote
mainly under his own name, but also as Paul French. Because you got to have a couple of books under a different name, right, Tremaine?
Yeah. Not a lot of people know this. My one of my pen names is George R. R. Martin. Not that one. Not that one.
Pure coincidence, actually.
For a writer that's been writing before I was born, yeah.
But yes, his works have been adapted so much. Everyone should be aware of iRobot, and I hope also Bicentennial Man with who's that funny man? Robin Williams. But yeah, just a shame that there's this dark mark of how he was with women.
Which will bring us to the H.P. Lovecraft episode next week. Thank you for listening.
Please no.
Thank you for listening. Jag will be in town all week. So thank you. Thank you once again for listening. And don't forget to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages to join in the conversation. Please do not post anything weird again. And if you have things like complaints or anything about what we've said, do message me and I will bring them up in the podcast. Thank you again for listening. Goodbye.